want to hear from you guys more than listen to Diaz yap.
Yeah. So I think just like, if you have a question, raise your hand, and it will be attended to.
Questions about really breaking in writing and trying to continue a career doing it.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different stages of being a comic book writer, and I think the most common stage across the world is not being one, because most people are not comic book writers. And so this is advice that is for that gigantic swath of the population that is not one, and then that tinier fraction is considering trying to figure out how to be one. And even though comics is what comics is, there are still a lot of people who are trying to break in. So when you are putting yourself in an environment where other people are trying to break in at the same time, you're sort of in competition with them anyway, because there's only so many slots. And the way that I came up, and I don't know if you did, but I'm sure it wasn't that difficult, it was your turn, was basically going to events like this, going to places where comics were being made, comics were being talked about, people who make comics, and have the doors of it, that can be open to let you to make comics are. And it doesn't happen right away. It's a really long process. It's a process of you learning how to make comics, it's a process of you making comics, but it's also very much a process of you meeting the other people who make comics and understanding the things that you need to do to be given a chance to make, comics of Marvel or DC. And so the advice that I came up with, which is advice that I did, and that's kind of why I give the advice, is the 3 B's, right? Be good, be cool, be around. And be good is pretty self-explanatory. You are not going to be asked to write professional comics unless you are able to create comics at a professional level. Marvel and DC will not train you how to do it. When you come in that door, you need to be able to do it. Image Comics will not hold your hand. Honestly, no professional comics company will publish your comic unless it's publishable, because nobody wants to lose money. So, comics. But so just work on your craft, and don't just show it to people who are like, your mom or your best friend, right? Who are going to give you nice feedback, even though it's not quite there yet. Learn how to do it, and learn how to do it really, really well, so that and being honest with yourself, whatever you've done is as good as anything you see on the stand at the comic shop. That's be good, be cool. The second be cool is about, like, in comics is like, it's a very small crew, it's a very small crowd, it's a very small world, and word gets around if people are not, like, cool to work with, cool to hang out with, cool to be around, just pleasant to be around in general. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's part of it too. Like, the comics editors don't have time for rascals. I don't even know what the right word would be in the context I'm thinking about. They don't, right? So you have to be somebody when they see you, because they don't know you at all. They cannot get a bad vibe from you. You've got to be chill. You've got to be respectful. You've got to understand that their time is valuable, so on and so forth. So whenever you are interacting with anybody at any level in a comics context, be cool. And then the third thing, which is can be trickier because it's complicated to do it, is be around, which means you just have to kind of be in the scene. Because the way that the editors pick people out of obscurity to write, I mean, in my case, it was Swamp Thing. I don't know what your first big team was. Steel, there you go, right? Like, the books that they pick you to write, it's because they've met you 20 times before. They've had cool, fun, nice conversations with you. They have had a chance to flip through whatever work you've already made. And you've just been around in the scene for a while, and the vibe has never been bad. Nobody's telling stories about, oh, that guy, oh, you heard what Charles did? Nobody ever told stories like that about me because I didn't do bad stuff. And so, if all of those things come together, and in my case, that coming together took, from the day I started thinking, oh, I'm going to make comics, to the day I was actually asked by DC to write Swamp Thing was 8 years. So it's a very, very long process, but I don't think you can get around any of those three things. So there you go.
My entry was a lot different because I started out, I saw the way in for a lot of writers was getting on staff, starting as an assistant editor. So I worked up my way from being an assistant editor to the Batman group editor in the course of 15 years in DC. So, I was able to make great relationships with everybody because I literally saw them every day. me at lunch or in the office. So I was already a face of the name, and all the things that Charles just said, I did all those. I made sure I was, not a schmo, did the right things, et cetera, and when I did get work, I made sure it was uber professional and was always on time. And the difference between Marvel and DC back then, and even now, is Marvel was a real in-house place of like allowing editors to write. And Paul Levitz was very much against that. He thought that, freelancers were out there trying to make a buck. You had better well be damn good if he was going to take somebody, food out of somebody's mouth who's trying to make a living, keep a roof over their head. So Paul took me to lunch, but first, after I think I'd done a couple showcase issues and 2 issues of Steel, and he said, hey, I know that we do bring in guys from staff every once in a while. And he said, so your stuff is very good right now, but he says, the minute I smell you hacking it out just for the buck, boom, you're going to be out. So I was like, thank you for the pep talk. And I always just kept my standards high. And I got into writing full time because after all those years on staff, I was looking for my next writing job at DC. And at the end of the deal said, here, I'll give you this much. I'd rather have you on the other side of the table now. So I was like, oh, well, that's a lot more than I'm making. I'll do that. And luckily, that's how it worked out. And I was exclusive for DC for 16 years after that. So, but it was all about all the things that Charles said, just doing those things and keeping that focus and, doing the best you can and knowing that, I always look at my comics being very personal and, my name is on it. And the great thing about comics is it's tangible. And, everybody thinks about their immortality a little bit. This sounds very philosophical and highfalutin, but, I always want to make sure I want to leave something behind. So, to be able to leave something like that you really care and are passionate about, it really made a big difference to me. So I always made sure that I put 110% to everything.
How much are you allowed to create new characters? And if you do create a new character, are you the owner of the character, or are you the publisher, if that is the publisher?
Interesting.
Are you concerned about
I have a background in law. I'm a licensed attorney in New York. I practiced law for many years, and so I have a view on these questions that is maybe a little different than most. But I will also say these have been a lot of fun process questions. If you guys want to ask questions about like R2D2 and stuff, you're welcome to do it, or Superman, or anything you want. It doesn't have to be the process stuff. That's this kind of conversation we can have. So I think just to give a very brief overview of how this works for those of you who don't know, I'm sure it's been in, people talk about this now in a way they didn't used to talk about it 20, 30 years ago, but if you make up a new character and it's on a Marvel or DC book, they own it. If I make up a new character in Star Wars, Lucasfilm owns it, and they are able to do whatever they want with it down the road. They can put it in movies, hey, that's cool. They can kill them off, that's not as cool. They can assign it to another writer who I don't think is writing them the right way. So what? Doesn't matter. It's not mine to do anything with. But crucially, to what you're talking about, I think, is they can also make $50 billion off it, and they don't have to give me anything other than what they paid me to make it in the comic that I made, right? And that's really where the sticking point comes, and that's where lawsuits come in for characters that were created a long time ago. You're probably maybe very familiar that there have been big lawsuits about Batman and Superman, who made them, who should have credit for them, who should be paid for the gigantic multimedia adaptations of them, the billions of dollars that IP generates. So my view in the landscape that we have now, where all of these things regularly happen, I just had a character that was a big part of the Daredevil Born Again show that just aired on Disney+. And there's been enough bad PR generated by the big two not taking care of creators that now they kind of take care of creators. DC handles it one way, Marvel handles it another way. I'm not going to speak to the specifics of it, but there's at least some lip service paid to the idea that there's value in the creator being compensated when these things are adapted. However, they almost can't legally do it to the degree that they would if it were any other type of business innovation, because that opens the door to every person who's ever created a character in any comic book being given a fair share of the revenue that character generates down the road. So, all of which is to say, when you create a new character for Marvel, DC, or Lucasfilm, you need to do it with your eyes open. You need to understand that you're doing it to add to the legacy of something that you believe in, that you loved when you were a kid, and you're mostly doing it because it's cool. It's super cool to have something you made up be part of the Star Wars world. I made something called the High Republic for Star Wars, which is a gigantic, so that's not at all, right? High Republic. That's a gigantic new initiative for Star Wars. It's a whole new era. It's full of like hundreds of new characters. Many of the primary ones I made up. I will not see downstream, like, you know, like if they make a huge movie of some of my books, it just does not work that way. But I've loved Star Wars since I was like this big, which I guess is pretty big. Like, imagine that was on the floor. Like, since I was a little kid, it's been my favorite thing has been Star Wars, lightsabers, the Force, all of it. And so the fact that I got to add this thing that's meaningful to as many people as it is, you know, yes, I would love to be given a check for $10 million. I know I'm not going to get it. I did it anyway. And so in this landscape, do it anyway if you want to, but, you know, do it with your eyes open. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, like Charles said, it's you have to, when you're doing work for hire, it is work for hire, and they really legally don't owe you a dime. Everybody, you know, be it Thanos or all of the, whatever the stuff, everybody signed it, and you know, it's just the way it is. So if you've got great characters, and you know, this happened to DC many years ago, but once some things escaped and got made, when rights reverted and made, like Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks and Paul Newman. That was a DC book. It was coming out from, I forgot the name of the press that was in it. Piranha Press or no, something else. But one of the offshoots, like Vertigo.
Yeah.
And it got made, and the rights reverted back to the author. And then, boom, they quickly made a movie out of it because Warner's had dragged their feet for like I think it was 5 years. So it reverted. And then Levitz went to the editor's office, like, and it was crazy. What the hell? Newman? Tom Hanks? This was ours, and now it got made? What? With Sam Mendes directing? What the hell? And so they changed contracts from then on in for quite a while until they realized the thing here, reverting back to what you were saying, is that guys were then like, hey, but these are really a tough contracts. The company was getting everything, and the creator was just getting his pay rate. A lot of creators are like, you know what? I'm not giving my best ideas. I'm not going to give the cool stuff. I'm going to save it for myself. And that's what you have to judge. You have to judge whether you want to have a thing like Charles said, that you love to have a passion for with the DNA of your Marvel or DC years. You want to see it in a comic, then you happily give it up, and you know you did it with your eyes open. Otherwise, there's stuff that you want to keep and you hope to make your own one day and capitalize it for yourself and your family down the line. And that's another thing.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend the whole time talking about it. This could become the creator-owned versus work-for-hire panel, but one of the big things that happened, there used to be, at DC Comics, there's an network called Vertigo, which was where some of the most, like, truly astonishing original ideas in comics came from. There was a wave of Vertigo comics, and we're talking like wasn't Alan Moore Swamp Thing was originally Vertigo? Like, yeah, so Alan Moore Swamp Thing, there was Sandman, Neil Gaiman, a bunch of, Preacher, Transmetropolitan, like these like truly game-changing comics came out of Vertigo, and the deal then allowed people to retain ownership. I believe the early version of the deal.
The early deal was actually, it was amazing. It was 90 days.
Yeah.
So Warner Brothers, DC Comics had 90 days to either, excuse the expression, because I'm getting kids, shit or get off the pot. and then boom, that was it. So 90 days went by on Preacher, and Garth, you know, I'm good friends with Garth. He was like, hey, I got Preacher back after, 3 months. And he took it and ran with it. And many times, it was a development hell with other places, but it was his, and he ran with it as much as he could. So, that all got changed.
Yeah, so that's what happened, right? So it's sort of two things that were in conversation with each other. One of which was that there's a company called Image Comics, which, if you know the comics business, or if you've heard of it, Image Comics, they started in 1992, and they were part of the reason they existed is because a bunch of really, really famous artists in Marvel and DC were like, we don't like that we don't own our stuff. We have cool ideas. We have huge numbers of fans. We're going to make our own things that we own, and that became Image Comics. And Image Comics moving forward, became a place where people could take their original characters and their original ideas and own all of them, including those rights for movies and TV, which they could then sell or license to studios to make revenue streams. And so that became a really viable way for people to kind of start at Marvel or DC, get a name, and then go over to Image and start making creator-owned comic books. And Pete and I both made creator-owned comics and done well with them, and it's an awesome that path exists. And Vertigo, though, changed their deal to close that 90-day window. Like to basically they took ownership and they would keep ownership. And so yeah, you know, like, and so writers and artists of a certain level stopped giving anything to Vertigo. Because, as you said, why would you do that? Why would you give your best stuff that's going to make you $1 million to a company that's going to pay you $5,000 for whatever the ratio is? And all those people had a new place to put those ideas, which was Image Comics. And so now, I mean, there are exceptions, but the general rule is creator-owned stuff goes to Image because you own it, and like nobody else gets it because like it's. I mean,
It's a great deal.
Yeah.
When you get it, the only thing Image takes is the percentage of sales and things like that, but
Yeah, it's
media
totally
rights,
fair.
they don't take anything.
And Vertigo's gone now. I mean, Vertigo died because nobody would give them any books. So it's I think it's this balance, right? Because you know everybody's going to want to read a Spider-Man book, but once you get to a certain point in your career, Spider-Man's going to take more from you than Spider-Man's going to give in a way, right? Whereas Image, the possibilities are endless. It's just kind of, you know, a well-managed career has a balance of both, I think, these days. And it's tough, but, you know, you have to be very smart about it.
With the High Republic coming to an end here with your final novel for it, in hindsight, looking back at the initiative and how it was all put together, are you happy with where the High Republic has gone as far as its reception that it's certainly gotten lately? And then secondly, the series, The Acolyte, kind of takes place towards the tail end of the High Republic. Did they ever use you as a creative consultant on that or anything like that?
So the second one's really easy to answer, so I'll just do that, and then we can talk more about our Republic. So I was a creative consultant for Lucasfilm during Acolyte production time, so I wasn't like credited consultant or something like that, but I, you know, it was something that was always kind of in the mix in terms of things that were being talked about. Leslie Headland did a great job on that show, but she came into it with a lot of the stuff kind of set up. Like she didn't really need consultants. Basically, she was good to go. Awesome show. So as far as the High Republic and where it's gone and how I feel about it now, it's been extremely personal for me because Star Wars: The High Republic, which I know some of you already know, but very quickly, is a new era of Star Wars that was set up. It's in the time period of about 250 years before the Phantom Menace. So it's a time when the Republic was in a golden age, no Sith were around, the Jedi were ascendant, everything was like beautiful, the Jedi wore white and gold robes, it's very, very cool. And so we are telling a story that is set in that time when the Jedi face this incredible challenge that almost breaks them in half. Like they have to really do a lot of work to get over it. That started in 2021 with my novel Light of the Jedi, which debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Very nice. And is going to conclude on June 17th, which is like 2 weeks, with the final novel, Trials of the Jedi, which I also wrote. So that in between, there have been dozens and dozens of comics and young adult novels, little grade novels, and audio dramas, and all kinds of stuff. And it's told this huge interconnected story that builds to this big conclusion. I think, like, you know, do you like Star Wars?
Oh, I love it, yeah.
Yeah, me
yeah,
too.
I've been reading
I
it.
think, do other people in this room like Star Wars, right? Yeah. So imagine they come to you and they say, hey, you and 4 other writers, because there were 5 architects in the beginning, do you want to make your own Star Wars saga? Do you want to tell your own, like, you know, 4, 5, 6, episode 4, 5, 6 thing? Do you want to, there are no rules, there are no restrictions unless you get too crazy, and then we'll give you some guidance. But basically, from day one, you can do it however you want to do it. You can come up with the characters however you want to make them. You don't own them, but you will come up with whatever you want to do. Like, incredible, right? Incredible. And so we did. We started doing it. And then Light of the Jedi, #1. The other launched books all listed in their various categories. The High Republic #1 sold 300,000 copies at Marvel, like incredible success out of the gate. It's been years since then, so things cooled down a little bit, but still, the books are doing very well. It was generated the accolade. There's another cartoon show called Young Jedi Adventures for little kids. It's been the core element of a number of different video games that have been released. He's wearing a High Republic t-shirt right now. He's got his back to it, but trust me, he is. It's all over the place. And this is in Star Wars, which, forgive me, doesn't like new stuff, right? Like, it's very difficult to break new things into Star Wars because people, they like what they like. And this initiative has managed to break through that in a way that is incredible. I don't know if you've been to a Star Wars celebration, where like if you go to a High Republic event, there are, like when we did the High Republic panels in 2022 and 2023, we filled standing room only, people, like 5,000 person rooms who just wanted to hear about books. Like, it's impossible to do what we did. So I can't believe we did it. I can't believe it's coming to an end. I feel kind of bummed about it, honestly. But, we carved another face on the Mount Rushmore of Star Wars, and it's pretty beautiful, and I'm pretty happy about it. All right?
Thank you.
Sure. I think the High Republic at this point, and I cannot answer that question, right? But what I can say is that the High Republic is a firmly established part of the timeline now. Like, everybody knows it. Like, did you watch Andor? Okay. In the season finale of, the last episode of Andor, I think, or second to last, there was a big hospital on the top of it. There's a Corvesh, and it's named after the Chancellor in the High Republic, right? Lena Soto Memorial Hospital. Like, it's in there. The Barrage File was an accolade. I guess it makes more sense because it was set up, but like, it's not going anywhere. So, is there going to be an adaptation of Light of the Jedi tomorrow? They haven't told me if they're going to do that. But at some point, somebody will. It's too rich. It's too beloved. It's too big for somebody not to pick it up. When? I don't know. But I bet it'll happen someday.
You guys have both written some pretty big fandoms, like Star Wars, Batman, Daredevil, list goes on. And like you mentioned earlier, like Star Wars fans aren't exactly the most receptive to new things. They can get semi-hostile to certain things. How do you guys both, when you're like writing a new story, like when you take characters in a new direction or you make new characters, how do you like interact with the possibility of facing backlash from these fandoms?
Mine will be a quick answer, because I'm sure Charles has the Star Wars stuff. But you can't think that way. You have to think of what are you excited about? What is the company going to be excited about? But otherwise, if you start thinking about fandom, thinking about all these other people you want to make happy, then you've got a morass of just pure middle of the road crapola. So you've got to just be passionate about the thing you want to do, and then hope other people jump on the train and follow it. The way I look at things.
I think I should clarify slightly by saying there is an element of Star Wars fandom that can be very vocal about things that they believe are taking away from the parts of Star Wars that they love and grew up with and believe in whatever way. I strongly disagree with that viewpoint in general. I think that everything you liked is still there, and stuff has to grow and change, and some of growth and change is doing things that maybe aren't universally liked, right? Like Star Wars needs to evolve, all franchises, all characters need to evolve to be new things for new generations, like, Batman. Like, if they tried to put out the Adam West Batman now, it wouldn't work, right? Like, the take that seems to work right now is Robert Pattinson, that kind of that's what audiences are responding to. So I agree completely with Pete that you can't let the fans get in your head. You need to be your own fan, really. You need to decide that your voice wouldn't have the job. Basically, when I start something massive, I'm like, I wouldn't have the job if someone who knows what they're doing didn't think I had the chops to do it. And so I just trust that baseline beginning point. And then I just tell the story I want to tell and make it as awesome as I can. Which is not to say that I don't think about the character and the character's legacy and the things that are interesting about them. Because a new story about a character should in some ways be a conversation with all the stories about the character that are coming also, you know, writing a new story about Darth Vader should understand the way Darth Vader works in all of the other Darth Vader stories that have happened in the past. And if you can find a sweet spot of doing something new with Darth Vader that nobody else has thought of to do before, but nobody else is, or like a very small percentage of people are like, oh, Darth Vader would never do that. If they're like, wow, that is exactly what Darth Vader would do, and I've never seen him do that before, then you're doing the job right. So love the fans, cherish the fans. Don't always